Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining. Um, it looks like everybody's got their microphones off, which is great. So if you do have any questions that pop up throughout the duration of the live Q&A, or if you can't hear me or need to do any troubleshooting, you can always click the chat button. It's open for everyone and you can type your messages in there. I'll send one right now. And as always, this is being recorded, so if you want to say anything anonymously, shoot me a message on Patreon. Actually, I think you can send a message to just me on here in the chat room as well. And if you need to go, you can always come back and watch it later. So I'm assuming everyone can hear me because I haven't gotten any messages from folks that can't. But if you are having any issues hearing, let me know in the chat room and we'll go ahead and get started. Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. Alrighty, let me open up my notes. So to get started, I wanted to just go over, we've got a lot of new folks here. Just wanted to let you all know how I organize the question asking. So typically there's the perfect amount of questions every time, and I have yet to run out of time before answering questions, but just in case that does ever happen, we always prioritize tier 4 and 3, then tier 2, then tier 1. Tiers 3 and 4 get 2 guaranteed questions. Tier 2 gets 1. In general, it's just kind of if we have time. And again, so far we've always had time, but just so you all know, I know it's helpful for some people too who maybe don't have time to listen to the whole thing, but really want to be there to engage when their question gets answered. To know that I'm starting from tier 4 and then ending with tier 1 questions. And I've been trying to put some notes whenever I do the recording so you all can see what we went over kind of in order, so you can always go to the recording and kind of click around and see where the stuff is that you're most interested in listening might be. And of course, if questions come up as I'm answering, that's what the chat box is for, and please feel free to ask. Okay, let's get started. So my first question is about resins, which is exciting because I really love resins. And it's, could you possibly go into resins, tincturing them, other uses, question mark, how to source, what to look for in quality and sustainability. Thank you so much. And that was followed by another question that said, I'm seconding the resin question, sustainable harvesting methods. So to begin with resins are, what we're talking about is resins that are found in hardwood trees. However, a plant can be resinous. There are resins and gums and saps found in lots of different plants, bushes, and trees. But I'm assuming that what we're talking about here is like common resins, which is going to be things like frankincense, myrrh, gagol, pine, fir, spruce, all those kinds of ones that we use for scent, internal medicine, external. They're really amazing, and they are one of the oldest and most ancient medicines, and yet I feel like research on them has taken so long to get funded. One of the main reasons that we know them as such an ancient remedy is that they're self-preserving, which is maybe the most important thing to note about resins. There is 0 water content in resins, so they can preserve forever, literally. And we continue to find resins through burial sites, places of worship, all kinds of amazing places. Also, there are people who will test resins found in trees that are, you know, old and hard, and they will see how long they've been there, and it's a very long time. The other cool thing about this is we could dig up some frankincense from, you know, old place of worship from a billion years ago, and we could still put that on a piece of charcoal and smell its amazing scent, or infuse it into alcohol. And that's because they're self-preserving. So they have their own way of sustaining and preserving those constituents, which is incredible. So one thing you don't have to worry about with resins is, how old is it? Is it still good? Is it still medicinal? Of course, like fresh, wet, sticky resins, I personally love to work with over hard, but it's really not a big deal, especially when we think about like fresh, first dried plants that really tend to lose their freshness very fast. Resins are not that way. So you really don't have to worry about it quite as much. So anyways, I love resins too, because I feel like they are such a gateway to a lot of people. A lot of folks find them as a way to perfume their home, for fragrance, for spirituality, worship of any kind, and then realize their medicinal powers internally and externally. So let's see what else I've got noted here. There are some resins that I strictly use as medicine now. For example, gagol resin. I love the smell. It's really amazing in skincare. Most resins are, and I'll get to that. But I strictly reserve my fresh gagol for medicinal remedies, because it's incredibly powerful for helping folks with hypothyroidism. And it's so effective and powerful for that, that when I burn it, I feel guilty for using it in that way. I have been working with clients with hypothyroidism with gagol for a couple years now, and it's by far been one of the most drastic, visible experiences. And it's also one where if they're also working with a naturopath or a doctor and they see their TSH levels drop dramatically within 30 to 60 days, they're like, what are you doing? Who is this person? Can I talk to them? And that's always really cool and affirming. So gagol is one of my most used resins for medicine for that reason. Also very cool about gagol, it's good for cystic acne, which is kind of random. But if you suffer from hypothyroidism or cystic acne, I would highly recommend looking into gagol resin. It's very powerful. Now, that said, most resins are going to share like a few things in common. They're self-preserving. Also, almost all of them, I don't even know of one that isn't, are going to be highly antimicrobial, antimicrobial and antibacterial. So we use a lot of resins and saps around here in remedies for open wounds, which we will get to in a second. A very important thing for me to note. So we talked about how resins were self-preserving because there's no water in them. Well, they also have zero water solubility. So you can't like throw some frankincense or pine sap in boiling water and steep a tea of it. It's not that simple. We also can't pour 100 proof alcohol over it and hope to get an effective tincture, because there's no water solubility. And with 100 proof alcohol, you've got 50% alcohol, 50% water. So when I'm tincturing resins, and if that's something that you're interested in doing at home, you will need to source 190 proof alcohol, pure, like the purest ethanol you can find. That said, it's very harsh, very strong. That gagol resin tincture that I make for folks with hypothyroidism, I mean, you got to be determined. It's intense. And there are lots of people taking frankincense tincture now for inflammation. It's insanely amazing for inflammation. And they're having to take a really strong extract of it in that 190 proof alcohol, but it's effective. So, you know, you just got to do what you got to do. I mix my gagol resin with cinnamon just to kind of, you know, if it's going to be harsh, it might as well taste like cinnamon. I don't know. All right, let me see what else my notes say. Oh, you can also infuse them in oil. In fact, that's what I do a lot of the time for skincare. So not only do resins share that common denominator of being antimicrobial, but they're also very regenerating. And what that means is that they're supporting cell turnover. Now, there's only really two ways that a product can be anti-aging, and those two ways are to prevent, to protect from antioxidants, and or to be an antioxidant and protect from like free radicals, sun damage, pollution. So protecting is one of those ways, or helping with cell turnover, which is renewing those skin cells, which is going to help you visibly look younger. Resins are incredible for that. So one of our serums is called Parvati, and that's our anti-aging serum, because it's made of almost entirely resins in oil, and it's really helping cell turnover, which is not only helping with aging, signs of aging, but sun damage, sunspots, scarring, etc. Anything where, you know, turning over those skin cells is going to be super helpful. So I left a couple notes on here. Another one that I really love is Balsam of Peru, which, like pine sap, helps speed up the healing of burns and wounds. Pine is, of course, going to be a little more ethical because it's much easier to find nearby in the States, which I'll get to more in just a second. The other interesting thing about using pine sap on wounds is that it's helping to speed up the recovery of wounds and burns by localizing immunity, which is just, it's a little special. You know, each herb does its thing in its own way, and that's the way it does it. So frankincense is being studied and documented most for its anti-inflammation and inflammation modulating constituents. And it is very effective for not only inflammation, but asthma. And there's an asthma question later. So if you're here, you might want to think about using frankincense. So, and then there's some other resins. So most resins are also going to have antiparasitic, analgesic, antibacterial, antimicrobial, but myrrh resin in particular is a very strong antiparasitic. Myrrh resin is probably my third most used. First being giggle, second frankincense, third myrrh. Myrrh resin is actually in our swish, our oral rinse, and it is tinctured in the 190 proof to get it to dissolve and get all those constituents. And myrrh is a really special ingredient for oral hygiene because it's got those insanely antimicrobial properties that we find in other herbs, but they're very concentrated in myrrh. So the question about sustainability, there are very few people, I would say three people that I get resins from. And what I would suggest in looking and sourcing for resins is people who literally are showing you the process. For example, you know, we think about companies like mine versus natural companies where you never see their face, you never see their office, you never see their process, you don't even see live plants on their page. So you're like, how are they getting this? How are they making this stuff? Look for people who show their process. For example, the person who I like bow to, follow, and support the most in the resin world, his name is Dan Riegler. Dan Riegler, Rieglar. Unfortunately, I'm spacing the name. Oh, I remember, his business name is Apothecary's Garden. So the cool thing about Dan is that he is going to these countries that these resins are coming from, and he is teaching townspeople how to ethically harvest these resins, and he's directly paying them. There's no middleman, so he's ensuring ethical harvesting practices, and he's also paying them fair trade, which is incredible. Not to mention, Apothecary's Garden, Dan Riegler, has his own blog and website and very active Facebook page. This is an older man. He is not on Instagram. check out his Facebook. He's got a few groups. He sells on Etsy, but he has his own blog, and he has videos and classes and free blog posts about how to make your own extracts from resins, be it perfumes, hydrosols, tinctures, oil infusions, you name it, salves. He's amazing, and you can get everything that you want from him. Another source that I really enjoy is Sense of the Earth. And the third one is a private partner. They're not, they don't sell publicly, but that's who I get my fresh gogol resin from. And it is a woman from Tennessee, from the US, who now lives in India and has started this really beautiful sanctuary for women, widowed women in India. And so in India, if you're a woman and your husband dies, you're considered cursed and you are thrown out and disowned by his family and your family. So she created this sanctuary for those women to have family and community and to be able to make money, and it's very special. So I also thank all of the hypothyroidism help from the gogol resin due to all that beautiful energy going into that. Sorry, let me accept a couple people waiting to get in. Okay, great. She's in. So sustainable harvesting methods, I'm going to post a previous Patreon video in the chat room for anyone interested. This is a video I made a while back on me harvesting pine sap and discussing sustainable methods of harvesting sap. Now, in the States, you know, we're not going to be going out and harvesting balsam of Peru, frankincense, myrrh, all that stuff. But we can harvest spruce sap, pine sap, fir sap, larch sap, cedar sap. So many trees have saps. Think evergreens. And something that we do every year, well, we're surrounded by pines. So we extract pine sap and make our own pine tar. And typically we can do that extremely sustainably because we have huge pine trees, and every time there's a storm, branches fall. But there are also ways I discuss in that video to sustainably harvest sap, not from fallen branches as well. And then a video that I'll do soon is on how to make your own pine tar, which is a really cool method of basically making a concentration of pine sap. Just a quick way to explain it. We take an old, like a paint can style can, you poke holes in the bottom of it, you stick your cut up pine branches that you know are full of pine sap, or whatever tree that's full of sap in there, and you start a fire on top of it, and you dig out a little hole in the earth. So we've got our fire on top of our can that has our trees, and then we've dug in a hole and poked holes in the bottom of the can. And what happens is you're heating up that can that's heating up those branches, and that sap is heating and falling out and melting into the earth. And since it's self-preserving and there's no water, you can literally scoop it out because it's not going to like absorb into the dirt. It's a really cool process. I'm definitely going to get Francesco to make a video on that for you all next time we make some. And the pine tar concentrate is really great for having in your like first aid kit. It smells really good. We primarily make soap from it and use it for animal care, which is another question I'll get to in a little bit. But yeah, I think that's about it on the saps. Okay, moving on to how does everyone deal with extremely dry feet, severe callousing? I'm desperate, constantly barefoot, and unfortunately my feet suffer for it. All right, I am also always barefoot, even when I shouldn't be. I would rather like clean off chicken and goat poop from my feet than wear shoes. So I hate to say this to you, but you might need to wear slippers or socks or shoes for a little while. Because what's happening when we're always barefoot is our feet are going, or our body rather is going, okay, we're barefoot. We need to create that protective layer so that we can be barefoot safely all the time. So those calluses are just going to keep growing and growing and growing. There's no way to slow that growth if you're practicing slowing the growth while being barefoot simultaneously. So even if it's just for a few weeks, a couple months, depending on how severe it is, if it were what I would do is say, Tori, you are going to wear slippers when you go outside just for winter, just for these next couple months, and we'll see how it goes. But that's not all. That's just the first step. So I highly, highly recommend feet soaking as a regular practice to anyone. It's incredible for supporting the lymphatic system, circulation, so many other things. But soaking your feet regularly, of course, is going to help soften. And then using a humectant, oiling, using tallow, fatty oils after that, immediately after, to trap in that softness from the heat is crucial. So things you can put in that foot bath, for one, you can fill up the tub and just soak your feet in it. But something that I love to do that really feels like a treat is get a 5-gallon bucket, fill it up with whatever you like, herbs, Epsom salt, magnesium, Dead Sea salt, maybe you just have Himalayan pink salt, that's fine. Fill that bucket up with hot, hot water. You can put oil in it even, which would be great for you. And soak your feet while you're watching a movie. It's the best thing ever. So when we're having a movie night on Sundays and I remember, oh, I should go get my bucket and soak my feet, it is some serious self-care. So after you soak your feet, and I would say once a week if you're dealing with severe callousing would be necessary. I think once a week would be amazing for anybody, but I can't seem to do that. So I know that might be not be realistic for everyone. Soaking it in warm water with either oil or herbs or salts, and then using fatty oils afterwards, like either avocado or extra virgin olive or tallow or lard. If you can get your hands on tallow or lard, that would be especially great. And I'm not sure how far you're willing to go, but if you are interested in making your own like kind of foot salve, the best combination that you could do for this is to use a sap, a fatty oil like olive or avocado, and some tallow or lard. If you really can't use tallow or lard, maybe you're vegan or you simply can't get your hands on it, you can use coconut oil, but it is simply not going to work the same. Mix those all up. They're all soft ingredient. Oh wait, never mind. The resin isn't soft. So you'll have to use a double broiler to soften that resin into the fats. Stir them all up and it'll harden, thicken back up because of the tallow or lard, and you'll have like a soft butter. Now the reason for adding either the pine sap or another kind of sap is that they're protective. So I'm going to end up accidentally jumping into another question here, but I use pine tallow the most in salves where, of course, I want that wound recovery, speeding, wound healing, antimicrobial, antibacterial, but also think about how sticky and thick saps and resins are. They're really great for slapping on a wound because they are like adding a protective barrier where nothing can come in and nothing can go out, meaning moisture. So of course I don't mean nothing, like it's still breathable, but it's really good for kind of sealing stuff in there. So if you had pine sap in there, that would just be a really great protective layer, especially if your feet are super dry and calloused and prone to cracking. Now, another amazing ingredient that we keep on hand is lanolin. From sheep's wool. If you can get your hands on lanolin, that's also really thick and sticky and very moisturizing. Okie dokie. Next question. I feel like I'm going to be repeating myself a lot. If you follow me on Instagram, and you have been for a while, so bear with me. I'm sorry, but I get asked this question so much, and I think that people think I'm advertising, but I'm truly not. Is there anything you have found that truly helps hair growth? Yes, 100%. So before switching to the no poo method, and notice I'm saying no poo method because I don't care if you use my no poo rinse or not. Just cut out shampoo and conditioner. I have a video on Instagram about this that's very informative on the process and what you'll experience and what you can do about it. I will say I have made all these products if you don't want to make them and you would rather have them made for you. So literally from the time I cut my hair in elementary school to the 10th grade, no, I guess it was a lot longer than that. Basically, most of my life, my hair has not grown past shoulder length. People used to always say, well, stop cutting it. And I would be like, no shit, I'm not cutting it. It just doesn't grow. I would take prenatal vitamins, a silica supplement. Nothing would make my hair grow. And I wanted long hair more than anything in the world in high school. And it made me so sad. As soon as I switched from conventional shampoos and conditioners, and I was using really nice stuff for curly hair, my hair started growing insanely fast. Now, I will say that was also when we moved out to the country and stopped going to the grocery as much and started eating more animal fats and drinking more broth. So there's a lot more collagen in my diet as well. But truly, it did not just make my hair grow more, it made it stronger, shinier, thicker. It changed the shape of it. Like I always had wavy kinky hair, like not the kind of wavy curly that was cute on its own. I always had to like kind of scrunch it a bit or do something. When I cut out shampoo and conditioner, um my hair got like its light curl bounce back, and now I literally don't do anything to it. People think that I curl my hair. Nope. My hair is naturally very tight curls. One thing that I do is I brush it out when I'm using my leave-in conditioner, the seaweed conditioner, and that like helps to relax them a bit so I don't look like Susie Q, Curly Sue all the time. I just got a question. Hey Tori, I have been no poo for a few months, but I'm needing some more conditioning. Yes, 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 absolutely. Okay, so that is for sure what's responsible for my hair growth. That said, the herbs that are in all of our hair products, the Maiden Rinse, which is our no poo rinse, the Isis oil, the Wild Horse's Mane Tamer, which is the seaweed leave-in conditioner, and the I'm forgetting all my crazy names for products. Desert Dweller hair and body powder. So we've got 4 products. All of those products contain nettle, cinnamon, rosemary, horsetail. Those are the ingredients I would recommend to you if you're wanting to make something at home to encourage hair growth. The nettle, cinnamon, and rosemary are very stimulating. And so those are stimulating the follicles, which is like encouraging movement and growth. But specifically the horsetail, or taking a silica supplement or just using other herbs rich in silica, is what's literally helping it to grow. So before I get into the seaweed conditioner and read another question that just popped in, I will tell you that the first thing I made was our no poo rinse. Then I made the powder, because when you switch to no poo, the first thing that happens is you go through a greasy roots phase. It goes away. But I needed to make that powder to balance that out. Then, like the person who just commented said, they're starting to deal with it being drying because your hair was used to conditioner. And even though now you're encouraging your hair follicles to produce sebum on their own, which is pretty conditioning on its own. Occasionally we'll deal with dryness. So then I made the leave-in conditioner. I made our oil when Francesco, my husband, started experiencing alopecia. And alopecia causes hair loss, typically in patches. And he experiences hair loss, the alopecia, on his beard mostly and the back of his head. And he really likes his beard, and so do I. So it was very sad. So I made a very concentrated extract of the nettle, cinnamon, rosemary, and horsetail into an oil, which is now our Isis oil. Francesco rubs that on his beard every single night. And now he has no hair loss on his beard. Now, I feel like a lot of times people want a quick fix. Nothing is going to, you're not going to take something one time and it's going to bring your hair back forever and you never have to do anything again. He uses that oil nightly. Now, I will say he did use it nightly. He doesn't have to use it nightly anymore. He used it nightly to re-encourage that growth, re-stimulate those follicles that had gone to sleep. Alopecia is a really weird, complicated autoimmunity thing where your body is sending the wrong signals. Anyways, now he uses it pretty regularly, but not quite as militant. But I will say, if anyone here has alopecia or knows someone who does, just know what you do will need to be regular until it goes away. It takes a long time to recover from autoimmunity stuff because your body thinks that it's doing the right thing, and you have to slowly, like, reroute those train tracks. And that is a really great way to do it. Of course, there are internal things as well. Taking a silica supplement, for specifically if you're dealing with alopecia, I don't want to get into this conversation because it's so long and big and I've done so much research about it, but you also want to focus on detoxing. I'll leave it at that. Next question. I've been trying but had to cave, and now I'm using Lush's Avo wash sparingly, hoping I'll get there at some point. I've had incredible success with your no poo and hair oil combo. My hair has always been greasy, flat, and now I rarely ever wash my hair, once every 2 weeks at the most. Me too. That to me is the best part. All of us hate showering. I know I probably shouldn't say that publicly, but okay, I love showering. Like, if I had all the time in the world, I love water. It feels great, but I don't have time to shower. So it feels like a burden most of the time. Augustine and Francesco are the same way. Why do most of us shower regularly? Typically what I hear from most people is hair, either because their hair gets dry or their hair gets greasy, so they feel like they need to shower. Now, if okay, some of you farm, and obviously sometimes I do too. If you're literally dirty, that's different. But especially in the winter when you're not sweating, I do not have to wash my hair but like twice a month max. It's amazing. Now, I won't get too far into this because, like I said, there's that video on IGTV about how to make the switch and how to handle the process of switching. Oops, I just kind of forgot where I was going. I totally forgot where I was going. But anyways, to respond to Camilla, you said you were struggling a bit and now you're using Lush's sparingly. I'm wondering if you were struggling with dry or greasy. I know it feels like a lot of products, but most people I know are using shampoo, conditioner, a leave-in conditioner, and a dry shampoo of some sort anyways. But just know that all of my hair products were kind of made to go together. I'll say I don't use the oil very much because it's mostly for hair growth. What I use religiously is I wash my hair a few times a month with the maiden rinse. What I do is when my roots are greasy, I use the powder and kind of scrunch it in there. When my ends get dry, I use our seaweed leave-in conditioner. And now before I jump away from this, someone asked me to go into the conditioner. Hold on. So our maiden rinse, actually I'll just say all of our hair products except for the oil are oil free. So the seaweed leave-in conditioner is amazing because I wish I had brought some up here. I literally sprayed it on my roots this morning, and most people would hear that and think, oh my gosh, I would get so greasy if I put leave-in conditioner on my roots. Not if it's oil free. Seaweed is incredible for coating the strands of your hair. It's very slimy and mucilaginous. So it's really good at being conditioning and nourishing without causing you to get like greasy and oily. It's amazing. And if you have curly or wavy hair and you have not switched to seaweed-based conditioning, welcome. Welcome to the world of good curly hair. It's so nice. It's light. It doesn't weigh you down. It's just phenomenal. Okay, I'm gonna end there. So speaking of hair, someone asked me to talk a bit about the fermented hair rice rinse. Dana, to my knowledge, specifically, I really like raw Irish sea moss is very mucilaginous. Actually, you know, another ingredient that's in my spray is tremella mushroom. So look into raw Irish sea moss and tremella mushroom. I'm almost positive there are several other amazing seaweeds out there. So if you have one closer to you, give it a shot. As long as it feels like kind of slimy when it's wet, it'll be great. Okay, so the fermented rice rinse is a video I made earlier this month. Now, I want to talk to you all about this a bit in case you've made it and had issues, or you haven't made it, things to look out for. It's gonna smell bad. So the only time that it's for sure bad is if you see a layer of mold on top. Then we know it's molded, it's spoiled, it's bad. If it's thickening or it smells weird, that's part of the fermentation. However, the biggest mistake that I see with folks online trying to make the hair rinse is they heat it too high, which is going to kill any live bacteria left to help that fermentation process. So try not to heat it too much. In fact, the best thing to do is to steep the herbs that you want to add to your hair rinse and let them cool while you're massaging that rice and getting other stuff together. And then once it's nice and cooled off, then you can also add like some kombucha. If you keep a wild yeast starter around, this might sound gross to some of you, but like a kraut or kefir juice, anything that's fermented, kombucha is likely what most of you have around. That's also going to help that fermentation process. And like, let's say a few days go by and you're like, oh, I can't tell if it's happening. If you didn't add kombucha in the beginning, but you have some now, add a little splash in there. Anything that's going to add that live bacteria is going to help that kind of re-kick and start off. I keep mine going all the time because we use the rice rinse, you know, here and there. But if you had any issues with spoiling or molding, that would be my best recommendation. Can it be purchased kombucha? What do you mean by that, Heidi? The next question, I'm going to wait and see if she answers before I move on. Oh, yeah, like can the kombucha be store-bought? Absolutely. Yeah, anything that's, even the kraut and kimchi can be store-bought. Anything that's already fermented is going to be fabulous for adding to it. All right, the next question. What is good for sleep and quieting the mind? Again, if you've been following me a while, broken record, I'm sorry. I love the things that I love. They work for me and I talk about them a lot. Magnesium. Magnesium is the greatest mineral of all. It's incredible for sleep. It's incredible for hormones. It's incredible for digestion. But what it really does amazing for is sleep. And that's because on a chemical level, magnesium activates the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the system responsible for getting you calm and relaxed. It regulates your neurotransmitters, which send signals through the nervous system in the brain. And it also regulates the melatonin hormone, which guides your sleep-wake cycle in your body. So magnesium is my favorite. I also use, I really like the Calm brand of magnesium, just CALM. And they make one for sleeping called Calm Sleep. And it's got some other supplements added. It's very tasty. I have found that drinking magnesium powder works best for me. So the Calm supplements are lovely for me. I drink it every night. And sometimes people are like, well, how am I supposed to remember to drink that every night? I never have to think about it because it works so well for me that if I forget, I notice. So I want to drink it every night because it helps me so much. If I forget to drink magnesium, or if I forget to apply it topically, because you can bathe in it and find like magnesium lotions, I start to get like achy and crampy and like tired but not sleepy, or I guess exhausted rather. Magnesium is my #1 favorite supplement. It also binds to your GABA receptors. GABA is the neurotransmitter responsible for quieting down nerve activity. It is the same neurotransmitter used by sleep drugs like Ambien. So magnesium is perfect for sleep. By helping quiet the nervous system, magnesium may prepare your body and mind for rest. And then, of course, taking nervine herbs that work in the same way, herbs such as skullcap, passion flower, chamomile, California poppy, wild lettuce, lemon balm, catnip. These all also work by soothing the nervous system and helping the body to relax and binding to those GABA receptors. So we make a tincture called Rest in Peace that has the skullcap, passion flower, chamomile, catnip, and reishi mushroom, and it works very well. And so typically magnesium does it for me. I do not have too much of a hard time sleeping, but if I ever do wake up and can't get back to sleep, that's when I reach for my Rest in Peace tincture. All right, I feel like I should take a breather, but let's just go right into it. I am curious about skincare on the face, how much oil to use and what kind, and what's good for breakouts, what's a good routine. So I am a oil cleanser. That's how I clean my face and oftentimes my body. So very similar to how the no poo method works, where you're cutting out shampoos and conditioners. So let's think about like something you could find at Target, Walgreens, Walmart. So let's think about shampoo and face wash, and let's think about conditioner and face lotions and creams and all that stuff. So your shampoo or your face wash have surfactants and saponins and all these things that are meant to like foam and strip and cleanse. And then we've got the conditioners and the creams and lotions that are then adding these synthetic oils, oftentimes vegetable oils, that your sebum is like, what is this garbage? And so it's literally just sitting on top of your skin. So the shampoos, the face cleansers, they're stripping just the surface of your skin. How is a soap going to go beneath the layer of your skin? It's not. And same with shampoo. So you're stripping the surface of the skin, and then you are applying these fake oils, conditioning agents to your hair and face. And so what's happening is underneath your skin, cystic acne is sitting there waiting to erupt, blackheads, and they're like, we can't breathe, let us out. And so they form a team and they slowly start trying to push these toxins out. And you're like, what am I doing wrong? So there's a lot of things you can do to go deeper, but to just talk about like a good habit, a good routine for cleansing and moisturizing the face. Oil, likes like, right? Like dissolves like. So oil is the only thing that can dissolve oil. Now, our skin and hair are supposed to have these natural protectors and barriers called sebum, which is our natural oil production. When you're stripping that sebum, your skin it forgets how to produce. So it's either going to overproduce because you're overstripping, or it's going to underproduce because you're using all these synthetic lotions, and it's like, all right, cool, it's my vacation period. Which is why someone earlier asked about detoxing from harsh deodorants. Your skin and hair go through a wild detox phase when you get rid of synthetic products that you're using. Because for so long, your body, your skin has adapted to the products that you're using and the way that you've treated it. And so when you take that out of the equation, it's having to completely relearn how to protect you. And it takes time. And we can encourage it, of course. So what is oil cleansing? I've got some information about this on my Instagram as well. I have a highlight on oil cleansing and gua sha and scraping, which is like just using kind of a flat rock to sort of massage and encourage blood flow and drainage. But oil cleansing in particular, just to not overwhelm you all, I wash my face once a day at night. And how I do that is I get the water nice and warm. I kind of splash and wipe the dirt away with a cloth. Then I, rinse that cloth off, and I add my oil cleanser, Earth to Face, to my cloth, and I massage it in. You're just going to gently massage the oil into your face in little circles with your cloth. And what's happening is that warm water has helped open the pores. Now you're massaging those oils into the pores, and they're going to help dissolve that dirt and grime and grease under the skin. So after you've massaged that oil in, you're then going to, rinse with warm water, clean your cloth, and sort of wipe it away, the end. And you are welcome to, at that point, use a nice natural toner. Or if you feel like you need more moisture, you could add a couple more drops of the oil. You asked what oils were best. So the reason that I use tallow so much, hold on, let me get some light going. Whoop. The reason that I use tallow so much, which for those of you that don't know is an animal fat, I usually use beef fat. Beef tallow is really clean and like less fragrant than lard. Our skin's natural sebum is going to be closest to animal fats, their sebum, right? Whereas if you're taking like almond oil, why is our sebum going to recognize almond oil? It's not. You can use almond oil of your face. I'm just saying you're going to want to use the fattiest oils you can find that are the closest to your natural sebum. So I really like to use extra virgin olive oil, avocado oil, tallow when I can. You can use castor oil, you can use almond oil, grapeseed oil, but try to get some of those higher fatty content oils in there for sure. And then just to kind of go into, other things you can do. So it comes down to your detox pathways. If you have breakouts, it's typically an endocrine buildup from the endocrine system, and you're not able to detox naturally. So your detox pathways are taking to the skin. Typically, if it's on the face, that means that your lymph is a bit clogged up. Because if your lymph is a bit clogged up, it's like one barrier away from your skin. So it's like, cool, you take this. So how to support the lymphatic system? We talked about that a lot in the August live Q&A. So if you're interested in anything about detoxing the lymphatic system, check that out. But you know, there's some herbs that you can take. Dry brushing, gua sha, and scraping are big ones for me. Taking time to start from your crown and massage down to your armpits and your breast area, which is where most of the lymphatic system is releasing those toxins. So let's see, I made a couple notes. Hormones are produced by the endocrine glands. Healthy hormonal activity is dependent on a well-functioning liver and endocrine system. The liver plays a major role in hormonal balance and in removing toxins from the bloodstream. One of the skin's jobs is to excrete toxins and poisons from the body. So if the liver is not functioning properly, toxins can circulate longer and cause not only poor health in general, but acne as well. With this in mind, the need to nourish and strengthen the endocrine glands and detox the liver is very important. And I'm going to mention seaweed again here because seaweed is literally like endocrine food. If you don't like to eat seaweed, if you don't like the taste of it, you can take a seaweed supplement. I use we make I'm starting to get to that tired place of losing words. Our herbal sipping broth is an incredible way to support the endocrine system. It has tons of seaweed in it. I really love using dulse, and that's also in an herbal salt mix that we make. So I use those a lot, but I do also actually take a supplement for my liver. I'm so sorry I can't think of her name right now, but it's a friend of mine that just literally takes burdock, raw Irish sea moss, and one other seaweed and powders it and capsules it. Really, really good for the endocrine system and the liver. So seaweed. Next question. Do I really need to keep every jar? How do you set up and organize your herbs for personal use? I have no idea how to get organized with herbs. I find I keep some in my office and some in my kitchen. Wow, story of my life. But I'm absolutely overflowing our cabinets with jars, empty and full of herbs and spices. How do, LOL? I'm at the point where I just want to recycle everything that isn't a mason jar. Is that wasteful? Is it cool to put oxymel? Oh, we'll get to that in a second. Okay, so organizing with herbs. It's hard. I've only come to some conclusions this year, which is my 4.5 year of like heavy herbal use and selling products. So I am not using mason jars to actually store dried herbs. I'm only using mason jars to store infusions, oil, alcohol, tea, etc. What I'm using for herbs is mostly a vacuum sealer, and that saves a lot of room. Now, if these are herbs that you're pulling from every day, like to make infusions or whatever, that's a different story. Throw those in a mason jar and keep those in your kitchen where you're going to remember to use them every day. If you have a salve that you really like to make, or a tea blend that you make like once every few months, or if you just like to grow herbs and preserve them for later use, vacuum sealing is the best way to preserve freshness, color, scent, and save space. So what I do is I vacuum seal them, I label them, and I store them in boxes that can stack. And that would go, you know, in your office. Whereas in your kitchen, maybe you make a few tea blends. If you have all your herbs out for blends that you make religiously, maybe, you know, blend those together and have your like period blend, morning blend, sleepy time blend, to kind of shorten those jars. And then another thing, because we really love food as medicine and my husband's a chef, Lord knows storing culinary herbs is a whole nother story. we got really lucky and found one of those vintage spice racks where it's empty little jars that you fill up. And so basically what we do now is we have bags and bags and bags of bulk spices because we go through them so much. But we fill those little jars. That way we have it in the kitchen nice and organized. And then we've got all our bulk baggies up here in the office. Another thing is, let's see, I guess my process is I've got my big drying rack. I love having drying racks because if you have a garden or you order herbs when you get the chance to order them fresh, you can throw them on your drying rack and essentially forget about them for a couple days to a couple weeks, which gives you time to think about processing and storing them. That way you're not just like frantically throwing them in a mason jar. Then you can look at your drying rack and go, okay, I've got a lot of this. I'm going to vacuum seal it. I only have a little bit of this. I'm going to go ahead and tincture it or go ahead and make a tea. And then as far as keeping mason jars, I definitely had to get to a point where I was like, no more. No, stop giving me mason jars. I have enough. And actually this year I'm switching over to all amber jars, and I'll be donating all of my mason jars to a local free apothecary herbal place, which I'm excited to release the mason jars in my life. But they're so handy and awesome, and there's a shortage of them in the world right now, so that might also change the way you think about them. I'm not gonna lie though, my actual storage of mason jars, I have giant tubs in my shed where I just throw them in there in no particular order, just kind of stack them. It saves a lot more room. If I had all shelving for my mason jars, we would not have space for beds and tables and couches. So vacuum sealer would be my best recommendation. And then, you know, giving yourself time on the drying rack to decide whether you're going to vacuum seal, infuse, make a tea, etc. That way you're literally organizing it straight out of the drying rack. And then as far as stuff that you probably already have on hand all over the place, coming up with some little solutions like a nice organized spice rack that you refill when it gets empty. The next question was, is it cool to put oxymels and tinctures in hot tea? This is a great question. I personally add tinctures and oxymels to hot drinks, but I'm not going to add them to my tea and then wait for my tea to cool. I'm going to wait for my tea to cool, and then right before I drink it, I'll add a dropper of an oxymel or a tincture. You are going to deal with evaporation, but water is of course going to be the first thing to evaporate, and the constituents in the herbs are heavier. Those molecules are heavier. So they're not going to evaporate as fast as that water is. So you don't have too much to worry about. Just try to add it right before you drink it, but it's not as big of a deal as some people make it seem like it is. All right, this next question, y'all, I am so sorry that I have not yet made a video exclusively about herbal treatment for animals. I get this question a lot, and I'm just gonna have to bite the bullet and do it in the next couple weeks. This person was specifically asking about a guinea fowl, but just to kind of cover treating animals with herbs in general. My rule of thumb is I think like I think for humans. If my dog has a cold or my goat has bronchitis or a urinary tract infection, immediately my mind is going to what I would make for a human with a urinary tract infection or bronchitis or whatever. And then if I'm unsure if those herbs are pet friendly, I will Google, is lobelia safe for dogs? Most of the time, yes. There are a few herbs that are safe for us that are not safe for dogs. So it's just always good to double check. But generally, if I'm thinking, okay, what would I make in a blend for myself? Maybe one of the herbs is a little shady for animals, but most of the times it's not. I just make the same blend that I would make for me. Now, with chickens and goats and sheep and cows and horses, it's awesome because all you have to do is give them herbs. Like, they love to eat plants anyways. They're just going to eat those herbs. For my dog and cat, my dogs and cats, I will give them tinctures in their water, or I will make them an infusion, a tea, and add it to their water. And it's been very effective for me. So just to go over some general pet herb uses. Now, I did bring these two salves. So this is our cooling pine tallow balm. This is made for humans, but I used to use it on my animals all the time. And one thing about animal wounds is that their hair takes a long time to grow back where their wound is. So our PetRx salve is basically this same salve with a couple added herbs for added herbs. Oh well, I'll have to find that later. For hair growth, which if you were paying attention earlier, you know what those herbs are. Rosemary, nettle, horsetail, cinnamon. There's only a couple of those in the PetRx. But really great salve. Really great. And I still will use the cooling pine tallow balm wherever it may be for wounds if I have one easier than the other. Or like, let's say, you know, this person, for example, the wound is on, I think it was the leg. We're not worried about growing hair back on their legs. So you could just grab your cooling pine tallow balm over the PetRx. This person said they sprinkled some yarrow powder into the puncture wound and put a homemade salve with plantain and calendula. That's amazing. You did wonderful. The only things that I would do differently, if you can make a salve with pine sap in it, very antimicrobial, is going to create that protective barrier and is going to stay on that leg really well. This is also a time where I will use straight up pine tar and stick it on that wound. I did bring a few other things up here. We use our Herbal wound wash spray that is made for humans on pets as well. And then if there's something like on the chickens or the goats, I will also add this spray. It is called Vetericin Plus, antimicrobial wound and skincare. The only thing different about this is it has zinc. It's got some minerals in it that just help speed up wound recovery. And then for chickens, well, for everybody again, but really those chicken legs, like you're saying, they get those puncture wounds. This is called Medvance hydrocolloid. These are patches. I get them on Amazon, to be quite honest. I'm sure you could find them elsewhere. But these are really nice too. They've also got minerals in the bandage. And what I'll do is I'll just cut however, you know, whatever size piece I need. And then I take that like bandage tape and wrap it around. So I would go spray, salve, my hydrocolloid dressing, and wrap it up. And that's my like wound care for all the animals around here. Alrighty, let's see. So someone said, lately I've been thinking about supporting old injuries. For example, a broken ankle that never healed correctly several years ago. Could something like comfrey soaks or compresses help heal an old injury? Excuse me. Definitely. I still use my salves on old injuries. Particularly, I use my muscle rub because it helps with the pain. It helps warm and loosen it up. That's why I'm doing this movement. It's got comfrey and comfrey root in it, as well as St. John's wort. And those are just some of my favorite things for old injuries, just kind of helping, you know, with long-term recovery. So absolutely use comfrey, calendula, St. John's wort. Those would be my top three. My muscle rub is just also warming, which for me, I have arthritis anyways. Most of my old injuries get really stiff and creaky. So warming them up and using the St. John's wort for those nerve endings, which I suffer from a lot. Comfrey for that bone and cartilage, and calendula for the skin and scarring. Really kick-ass combo for old injuries. And you could absolutely use a tea-soaked compress or the salve. Those would all be great options. All right, next question. What do you consider when making a tincture versus an oxymel or elixir? Are there plants you directly automatically associate with one or the other? This is a really great question because I remember being very confused about this in the beginning of my studies. So at this point, I will say I hope that this answer comes across in an understandable way because it's become intuitive, which is how I really try to teach you all, rather than you reading, this herb is best in tincture, this herb is best in vinegar. I try to give you all what you need to know to think critically and choose yourself. So what would be the best way, pop quiz, what would be the best way to determine how to best extract certain constituents out of a plant? Here are your options: water, alcohol, oil, vinegar. Why would I choose one over the other? Does anybody have an answer? I'm going to look for that salve for 2 seconds. Let me know if you have an answer. Found it. Minerals and vinegar. That's good. Not the answer I'm looking for, but that's good. Anybody else? I'm going to go ahead and answer. Depending on density, hardness of the plant matter, oil level, like turkey tail needs water and alcohol because it's thick. Okay, this is getting very close. So Google it. Yep. So why would we choose water, alcohol, oil, vinegar? So the turkey tail was a good thing to mention because certain mushrooms need both water and alcohol. So the correct answer is solubility. So there are certain constituents in the plants that we're after, right? So for example, the plant lobelia, we're after the lobeline. You get to those with mushrooms, we're after the polysaccharides. You get to those constituents through your menstruum, your liquid. And now let me give you a good example. Reishi mushroom actually has way more water soluble constituents than alcohol, way more. So if you were to simply tincture your reishi mushrooms, you would barely be getting the medicine from it by taking that tincture. Even though you've made a really nice tincture, you've steeped it for a while, you've extracted it, you are barely getting anything out of it if you have not also used heat and water to decoct it, because those polysaccharides are water soluble. So think about those resins like we discussed earlier. They have no water in them. They have zero water solubility. If you have a glass of water and you drop a chunk of pine sap in it and you drink that water, you're literally not even going to taste that pine sap because nothing in it is water soluble, meaning you're not getting any of it in that water. So if you take reishi mushroom and you make a water extract, you're getting all those polysaccharides. Or if you take that same pine resin chunk and you drop it in you know, pure ethanol, it's going to dissolve and it's going to become one with the ethanol, and you're going to get every bit of that. I don't want to get too sciencey and complicated here, but someone asked a while ago, and this question comes up all the time and probably will forever. Actually, I might be able to just pull an example for you guys. Yep. All right, so this here, let me get good light action. I don't know if I can. I'm sure you all can see though, that thick sediment at the bottom. So this is, I believe, yeah, lion's mane dual extract. This happens a lot with dual extracts of mushrooms. So here's what happens. We tincture the mushroom in alcohol. Well, that's not enough. We need to pull out those water-soluble properties. So then we strain our mushrooms, we decoct them in water. I've got a video on this if you guys are getting confused and lost. And then we take our water extract and our alcohol extract and we mix them. Oopsies, there's sediment at the bottom. What is that? That means that I either have a little too much alcohol or a little too much water. Basically, all it means is I do not have the exact perfect balance of water and alcohol to dissolve those constituents. Well, here's an interesting thing. You're still getting them, because if I shake this bottle up, well, look, now suddenly there's no sediment. So every time I take a dropper of this, that sediment is still going into my body. So don't strain that out. You want that. That is actually kind of what someone who answered the question was saying about weight. Those molecules are maybe water soluble, but there wasn't enough water, and so they don't have the density to float in that alcohol, or vice versa. But you're still getting them because they're still in the jar. All right, I hope I didn't just lose you guys. So what do I consider solubility? Sorry to go off on all that. Hopefully it was helpful. So that said, somebody also said earlier, what did they ask? Oh, someone asked me about witch's butter mushroom, which is this little spongy orange jelly mushroom. And they said, has anyone ever tinctured it? How do you do it? I don't tincture witch's butter mushroom because I don't think that there's many alcohol soluble properties. There might be some, but it's not, it's a medicinal mushroom. Don't get me wrong, but it's not so medicinal that I want to make a high alcohol concentrated formula of it. Whereas something like turkey tail for immunity, reishi for immunity and relaxation, lion's mane for the brain, we want to take that concentrated extract and use it, you know, to make us feel better, to make us rest easier or alert our brain. Witch's butter is medicinal, but there's no like super serious actions that we need it to go in and fight. Also, it's almost entirely water soluble, so I'm not going to tincture that. What I do personally with my witch's butter is I dry them as I find them, and I throw them in soups and stocks, etc., where I'm using a bunch of water to boil down constituents of, you know, onions and garlic and bones. So that's what I'm considering. If I have an herb, so for me, nettle is another good example. Nettle is very mineral rich, vitamin and mineral rich. Nettle is an incredible herb. I'm not saying that you should not tincture it, but in my brain, I'm not going, oh, I've got the flu, so I'm going to take a nettle tincture. Oh, I've got a UTI, so I'm going to take a nettle tincture. Because it's so well-rounded and good for so many things, I don't need to isolate that constituent that's going to knock something out. For example, goldenrod for a urinary tract infection, elderberry for colds and flus, nettle, I just want the healthy vitamins and minerals from it. So for me, it makes a lot more sense to put it in a vinegar than to tincture it. Because to me, tinctures, water and alcohol, that's the highest, strongest concentration you can make. So I'm pretty much reserving tinctures for those heavy hitters where I want to isolate and localize those constituents. For me, vinegars are a little more free flowing. Like oxymels are tasty. You can add them to sodas and waters, or just kind of take them whenever. Honey infusions, teas, those are all more, you know, chill, easier ways to incorporate herbs into your life without like focusing on making this really concentrated fresh tincture extract. So I hope that answers your question a little bit. um Oxymels are a little more like, you know, I'm trying to think of another good example. Okay, so an oxymel that I make at home, that I don't sell because I just feel like, you know, you guys could make it from home too. I will take in the spring like cleavers, plantain, violet, nettle, all those yummy spring greens that are chock full of vitamins and minerals and soluble fibers, and we will infuse them into vinegar. Then we've got a really nutritious packed vinegar that we can pour into bone broth. We can make salad dressings, or we could add honey and have an oxymel. So I hope that that answers your question. Now, all of that information said, that is the information that is implanted in my brain that gives me that ability to critically think about, oh, I want to put this in a tincture, an oil, a vinegar, etc. So yes, I do have an automatic association at this point with what herbs I'm going to put into what. Next question. Grappa is more widely available than vodka where I'm living in Italy. Do you think I could use it for tinctures in the same way? Are there any spirits that should not be used for tinctures? Great question. You can absolutely use grappa. Spirits that shouldn't be used for tincture, I'm going to say no. I don't really think there's anything that it would be bad to tincture in, but what you're going to want to think about is percentage of alcohol. More times than not, we want at least 50% alcohol. So 50% alcohol, 50% water is going to be your 100 proof alcohol. Now, a little bit less, a little bit more, it's fine. I use brandy sometimes, simply because I like the flavor of it with more like dark, malty, rich tasting herbs. But it totally doesn't matter. A lot of herbalists use grape alcohol. Like I use organic cane alcohol. I used to use organic grain alcohol, and some people prefer organic grape alcohol or organic cane or corn alcohol, which apparently we all need to start learning how to make, because when this pandemic hit, people were using alcohol for hand sanitizer and still are, and so there was quite a shortage. So that said, yes, play around with tincturing and all kinds of different things. Take note of the color, the flavor, any sediment. You know, just kind of take some mental notes when you experiment, and that's going to help you learn what you like better and why, and again is going to help with those critical thinking skills. But yes, absolutely use grappa. Do you work with rue at all? I have Appalachian family with rue in their names, nicknames, but don't know much about it, and research is not turning up a ton so far. I do also love the scent of rue, and I do not work with rue. To my knowledge, it's more of like it's more used in magical practice than herbal practices. I know it can be used in herbal practices, but it's just one of those that's a little trickier. So I don't personally have experience with it. I do think it smells amazing. But if it's helpful at all, the rue plant originally was found on the European coast, and was brought here. So it's a European coastal plant, and the name rue is French. So I don't know if that'll be of help to your discovery, but maybe your family was coming from there to Appalachia. Next question. Hi, I remember you mentioning the different benefits of black-eyed Susans, and hold on. From what I can find, it seems like the root has similar properties to echinacea. If you have any other advice for preparations, applications, I would love to hear, as it is bonkers in my yard currently. I'm going to post a link in the chat room for this. Hold on one sec. So this is just a really good article about using black-eyed Susan root, how to extract it, how to use it, and what it's used for. So it's kind of complicated to compare it to echinacea because some people think about echinacea and they think about colds. Some people think about echinacea and they think about parasites. That's what I tend to use it more for. The black-eyed Susan root has been used traditionally by the I just lost the words, by native people, um, similarly for colds. And to my research, it looks like people are decocting it, so they're just using water, making like a water decoction from it and taking it. You could also apply that water decoction to something similarly to echinacea as well for parasitic stuff. This next question is a good, important one for this time of year. This person is wondering how you keep your syrups from going bad when shipping. I want to make some for Christmas gifts and ship some to friends. Is it best to add alcohol to preserve? And is there an option besides alcohol for those who can't have any? So this has a lot of answers because there's a lot of options. Oddly enough, I just kind of went through this whole thing and I'll get to it in a second. So the method that I use now is hot canning. So basically the same way you can food and jams, etc., you're heating your matter, your, you know, syrup, food, etc., up to 180 to 200 degrees and holding it there for 20 minutes. And then you're also boiling your container, your jar, bottle, your aluminum cap, and then you're adding that hot liquid to the hot jar, canning it, turning it upside down, and that's creating a vacuum heat seal. That is what I do. However, the past few years, that's not what I've done, and most other herbalists are not doing it that way. This is a very tricky subject, period. And unfortunately, what I'm dealing with right now is the caps that are needed to create that hot canning for the bottles that I use, which is, you know, like your classic Boston round shaped bottle, are sold out everywhere and have been basically all year. So you can use mason jars. That's what I would suggest if you're just doing it at home and sending it to friends and family. I would use mason jars and I would hot can it. Now what that does is that preserves it until the moment that seal is broken. So my syrups are good, totally good, until you open them, and then they need to be refrigerated and used within 6 months. Now that would be your no alcohol option. The other option is, there's two others that I know of. Using 25% alcohol, some people will say 15. I still have fermentation happen with 15%. Adding 25% like brandy, like a good tasting alcohol, can definitely be a way to do that. Or ship it priority and tell them to put it in the refrigerator as soon as they open that package. That is the most common thing that most herbalists do, is they just try to make their syrups very fresh right before shipping and tell people to refrigerate it as soon as they open their package. What I also see a lot of herbalists do is take pre-orders. That way they know exactly how much syrup to make, and that's exactly how much they ship out as soon as it's made. So it's just kind of this tricky situation that we all have to deal with. But if it's just for friends and family and you want to be super secure, do the hot canning method. Or if you can add alcohol, do that. Worst case scenario, make sure they know to throw it in the fridge as soon as they receive it. All right, couple more left. Could you provide, oh wait, hold on. I think this was one I had already answered. Okay, yeah, so we had someone ask about opening up drainage channels in the body. It seems like they were talking specifically about lymph, because they said if wanting to go further than practices such as dry brushing, facial and body massage, and supporting the liver. And they asked about using parasite cleanses and how to go about that process with the use of herbs. So I actually answered those exact two questions at the end of our August live Q&A. So Victoria, if you're here, or if anybody else is curious about those questions, we went heavy into lymphatic and other areas of detox, as well as how to use herbs to cleanse parasites. And then the rest of her question was, I'd love to know your favorite use for motherwort. And I already answered the last part as well with her. Okay, so the motherwort question is kind of going to be a part of this next question. So let me get to it. So one of the next questions someone asked, what herbs do you recommend for the heart? This last question is for a general tonic, as well as for people who might be concerned about the effects of medications on their heart. For example, albuterol or blood pressure medications. So recommendations for herbs for the heart. I'm including the motherwort question in this because that's one of the herbs I use. So we have a tincture called Heart Mend. And although the herbs in Heart Mend are really great for grief and softening the heart, they're also literally good for heart health and blood health. Rose hips, hawthorn berry, hibiscus, and motherwort, these are all very well-known herbs for helping with blood pressure, blood purification, and healthy heart function and like heart beating. Specifically, hawthorn has been researched and proven to help with heart issues and blood pressure issues within 2 weeks of regular use. Some people even show signs after just drinking 1 cup of tea. So those herbs that are in the Heart Mend tincture, motherwort, rose hips, hawthorn, hibiscus, ginger is also in there. Those are very good heart supporting herbs, and that tincture is meant for regular use and upkeep of healthy heart function. So those would absolutely be my recommendations. And that's my favorite way to use motherwort too, is for matters of the heart. All right, so next question. What are your thoughts on long-term use of lobelia / what do you recommend for acute asthma attacks? I'm not going to say long-term use of lobelia is perfectly fine for everyone, but I will tell you that my family, me, Francesco, and Augustine, all use lobelia long term, and it's the only lung supporting herb that I use long term that I continue feeling the effects of. So I have cystic fibrosis. Augustine has asthma. Francesco works around powders and chemicals, and so we each take lobelia regularly for those 3 issues, and it's been incredible for us. Now, lobelia specifically is my #1 recommendation for asthma, especially asthma attacks, because of its sedative properties. And what's happening when you're having that attack is that heavy contracting. So that lobelia is going to help relax, loosen that diaphragm so that you can take those deep breaths that you need to take. It's also great for, repairing damage to the lungs. So it's frankly my favorite lung herb. Now, our lung mend tincture is made for regular use. Lobelia can be very tricky. That's why if you do any research or reading about lobelia, it says to use under the instruction of an herbalist. Our lung mend tincture is already made in such a way that you can safely take it, because the amount of lobelia that's in it is very light and made for regular use. Whereas the other herbs in it, mullein, linden, hyssop, and usnea, can all be taken in large amounts and more regularly. So that tincture / just the herbs that are in it would be my recommendation for anyone suffering from long-term lung respiratory stuff, whether it be, damage from pneumonia, which I have, cystic fibrosis, asthma, or just working around those heavy duty chemicals, people around fires. That whole blend is not only good for opening and relaxing the diaphragm and repairing lung health, but opening those nasal passages as well. Is a full dropper of lobelia, part alcohol, part vinegar, as a single constituent still safe? I can't say yes to that, because for some people that is too much for them. So it's hard to say. If you have made a lobelia tincture at home and you are trying to figure out how much to take, you will know, because the side effect of taking too much is nausea. And if you really overdo it, like some people who don't research the herb, they take some lobelia and steep a tea of it, like just a cupful of lobelia tea. The most severe symptom is heavy vomiting. So I would say start out with a quarter dropper. You really should not need more than that anyways. And if you feel fine and you want to try more, do that. But I would not say to start at a full dropper. To give you an idea, think about our Lungman tincture. Think about that in a 1 ounce bottle. When you pull out a dropper of a tincture that has 5 ingredients, think about how at most you're getting 1/5 of this dropper. And with lobelia being the lightest herb in there, you're really getting more like 1/8. So you do not need a full dropper. Well, I would say you do not need to start with a full dropper of lobelia. Ease into it and see how your body feels about it. The question about how to identify hawthorn, I can't answer because it doesn't grow here naturally. So I don't have lobelia. I get it from a farm. But I will say I use the leaf, the berries, and the flower. So as far as processing it, just clipping those ends is going to be great. Using the flower, of course, when it's flowering, using the fruit when it's fruiting. And I just say if leaves get in there, that's great. Those are medicinal too. And that concludes our October live Q&A. So I hope that I answered everybody's questions. Thank you all for showing up tonight. And thank you so much for that note, Heidi. I appreciate that so much. I know you guys are curious, and I'm going to go ahead and tell you, since this is a small, intimate group, to my patrons, the release will be very soon. I'm not announcing it to the public, because if I say the date and then I don't meet that date, then it's this big, terrible thing and I get blown up. But I will tell you all that my goal is in 2 weeks, around the first weekend of November. That is an ambitious goal. I usually give myself an ambitious goal, so I at least get close to that and get most of the things done by then. So that said, I'm really, really hoping for the next release to be definitely within the next like 20 days, preferably in around 2 weeks. So I really appreciate everyone's patience with that. It's been a wild month of moving and trying to figure out how much I'm going to keep in this office versus how much I'm going to take to the new space, hiring, training. It's just been a lot. So I really appreciate your patience. I know I haven't been as active, but I'm all moved in now. Once this release gets pushed out, I will be very ready to get back into my normal rhythm of things. So I just wanted to thank you all so much again for your continued support, and I can't wait to get this next release out. So thank you guys, and I'll see you soon.